In 3, 2, and 1.
Talking Golf on the Golf Effect Network is on the air. Talking Golf is brought to you by American Transmission Company, ATC, helping you keep the lights on, business running, and community strong. American Family Insurance, insure carefully and dream fearlessly. Oak Park Place, offering senior living options for the lifestyle you deserve, with amenities and services for a carefree, independent way of life. And by the Princeton Club, a premier health club that combines state-of-the-art equipment with a highly trained staff and convenient locations. Now, here are your co-hosts of Talking Golf, Dennis Tiziani and Paul Brown.
And we welcome you to another round of Talking Golf on the Golf Effect Radio Network from Cherokee Country Club in Madison, along with Dave McCann, our engineer, Kevin Ryan, Dennis Tiziani, and I'm Paul Brown for another edition of Talking Golf. And I tell you, Tiz, this show is off and running and rolling, and the people that are listening on radio here on the Memorial Day weekend, we're going to give you a little heads up here. We want you to get a club and have it ready, because a little bit later on in the show, you're going to get an opportunity to put that club in your hand, and Dennis is going to talk you through the proper grip. But we're going to do that a little bit later on in the show. But there is a very definite way, Mr. Tiziani, to grip a club, right?
Well, there's a correct way. You know, we want to make sure the club in your hands are in balance. So when we teach the rest of the swing of how you unhinge and turn to square, that the club is square in relationship to your hands. You know, the last I knew, you hit the ball with the club head, right?
Yeah.
And the only thing that really moves the club head is your hands. You can move the club with your core body, but not the club head independent. So that's why we're going to focus, at least starting out, on how you hold the club. And then we'll go from there. But there are more parts to it, obviously, which we'll get into, but we'll get the club in balance in your hand.
Also on the show here on the Memorial Day weekend, Greg McLaughlin, who's the commissioner of the PGA Champions Tour, is going to be on with us. Dennis is going to do that demonstration on holding the club. Mike McFarland is going to be on. Mike was in Phoenix. I was out there with him this past March, and we toured the Ping Factory. And we're going to chat about the Ping Factory. You can actually go to the Ping Factory and take a tour. You can also get your clubs adjusted out there. And then Mike and Dennis are going to discuss a little bit about the different types of clubs and those kind of things. We got that all coming up. And we've got the opportunity for Birdies for Alzheimer's. We're going to chat about that a little bit later on in the show. And also First Tee, I want to mention this. First Tee is going to have their annual golf outing that's coming up. In fact, it's August 20th this year, and it's going to be here at Cherokee Country Club, an opportunity for you to support the First Tee, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But joining us now on the show, and we very much appreciate his time because he's got the Senior PGA Championship going on this weekend. Greg McLaughlin, who's the commissioner of the PGA Champions Tour. Greg, we got to have a little fun here to start the show because Dennis Tiziani has a great idea for you. I know you're not going to go along with this. Okay. Well, we're doing Birdies for Alzheimer's, Birdies to End Alzheimer's. It's a new campaign that we're starting with the American Family Insurance Championship here this year at the tournament. All of the money, 100% of it's going to go to research at UW Hospital. Tiz, you want to tell them your idea?
Well, yeah, you know, we had 1,022 birdies in the first year.
Went down to
800. Well, the object now is to get birdies. So what I'm going to do is volunteer my time and set the pins and make sure that we get adequate birdies in this event. So that's my contribution. I would be more than happy.
Fabulous idea. I think you should talk to your son-in-law and make sure that he's fine with, guys shooting 30 and 40 under on a couple of 59s. I'm not 100% sure that's what he wants, but we'd be in support of it.
I tell you what, Greg, you think about this, it's got some residual benefit too. You wouldn't have to have them reset after day 1 to day 2 to day 3. Just put them in the middle and leave them there for 3 straight days.
Right.
I don't think that's going to go. I don't think that's going to work.
Right. Just soak them right before.
On a scale of
each group.
I know.
On a scale of 1 to 10, I think this has about a 0.1 chance of happening.
Especially when he mentioned Steve was going to be involved. That's not going to work.
Oh,
He'd rather put the
Steve
pins in the
Madison,
sand trap.
The good players want it as hard as possible.
That's right.
Make the golf course as hard as you can.
Yeah, that's
because
right.
the cream rises to the top on the difficult golf courses, and Steve is certainly the cream of our tour so far this year.
Well, you talk about that. Yeah, he's played in 5 events. He's won a couple of times, tied for second, and finished 5th. And he is becoming, is he not, kind of one of the marquee guys on the Champions Tour?
Oh, no question about it. I mean, his appearance, beginning last year, he only played 6 events last year. He also, of course, had the President's Cup duties, which I think limited the time that he was able to play our events, but he's, been very, very successful this year, winning twice and certainly finishing second to Miguel Jimenez last week in Birmingham at the Regions Tradition. So, yeah, Steve's play stellar. The other thing which I thought was great, he played great at the Players Championship, faded a little bit on Sunday, but he attributed his newfound confidence on the PGA Tour to the success that he's had and his wins that he's had on PGA Tour Champions. So, yeah, we're delighted and certainly very happy to have him play any event that he's available on our schedule.
And speaking of that schedule, Greg, the contract for the American Family Insurance Championship, as I understand it, has been extended. It seems like this is just a total win-win, is it not? UW Ridge, the involvement of American Family Insurance, the community of Madison, the support and the attendance. It's just all positive, pretty much, isn't it?
No question. Yeah, I mean, it's been a model on our tour, and we're just so happy, really, with the partnership with American Family and how great, really, they've been in spearheading the development of this tournament. As well as University of Wisconsin. They've been a great partner as well. And it really has come from the top down, really, in both cases with, Barry Alvarez and Jack Salzwedel. Then what they've really been able to do in a short period of time. But the community's been great. Sporting sponsors have, equally been fantastic to work with. And we're very, very excited. And we're hoping longer term relationship would be something that we would love to see this event in Madison for a very, very, very long time.
We're chatting with Greg McLaughlin, who's the commissioner of the PGA Champions Tour. When you have a city like Madison, Greg, and you have the success that you've had in the tournament so far, how do you determine where the majors go? And is it unrealistic to think that that could be a combination of maybe having one of the majors down the road, or is that already set for a long period of time?
Well, there are 5 majors on PGA Tour Champions, 2 of them controlled really by the PGA Tour, one being last week the Regions Tradition, which has historically been played, at least modern times, in Birmingham, and that is where Regions is based and have a large footprint there. We recently announced the PGA Tours event, which is the Senior Players Championship, will be played at Firestone Country Club beginning in 2019. Prior to that, the event moved around predominantly in the Mid-Atlantic, in Philadelphia, Boston. This year we're playing in Chicago. And last year we played in Baltimore. And then the 3 other majors are really controlled by the separate organizations. This week is the PGA of America, and they play the KitchenAid Senior PGA at Harbor Shores, and then they move it around in alternate years. The U.S. Senior Open, controlled by the United States Golf Association, this year at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs. Next year it'll be played at the Warren Course at University of Notre Dame. And that event moves around really kind of in partnership with what the USGA's goals are. And then the Senior Open Championship played in Scotland, England, and really around Europe. This year we played at the Old Course, and next year it's at Lytham. So those three organizations really control where those events are played. To answer your question, I think it's probably not something necessarily that would happen. I mean, I do think the business model of 2 days of Pro-Am plus the 3 days of competition, that's what we do generally, 23 or 24 events on our schedule. And it's a successful model, it really is.
Yeah.
And I think that American Family's, very happy with the current setup.
Greg, we should mention also there was a change on the way you're going to do the playoffs for the Charles Schwab Cup, as you're going to reset the points at the season's end. Why don't you just recap the changes that are going to happen and why they were made?
Really, we made a fairly small change to the finals after 2 years. Historically, right now, the way that the point list works is it's dollar for dollar. So if a player wins $300,000, that carries them through the entire year. So at the end of our regular season in Raleigh, the SAS Championship, wherever you are in your total dollars earned for the year, you're slotted accordingly, and the top 72 players make the first playoff event, then the top 54 in the second playoff event, and then the top 36 make it to the finals, the Charles Schwab Cup Championship. But in the playoff, we basically take that dollar amount and we give it 2x. So instead of dollar for dollar, it becomes a 2-to-1, just to create some volatility within the playoffs and give really potentially all 72 players a chance to continue to advance all the way and make that finals. The change to the final event this year, we used to do a reset of all 36 players, which really created a little too much volatility. So what we're going to do from a consistency standpoint is just have a 2-for-1. So it's basically 2x for all three of the playoff events. In the past, it was 2x for the first two, then the reset, which is kind of similar to what they do in the FedEx Cup, but making it 2x all the way through. I think what you'll see is a player that finished in the top 10 going into that final event. The likelihood is the player will come out of that top 10. So it won't create as much volatility, maybe as you saw in the FedEx Cup when Bill Haas came from, I think, 27th, won the final event, won the FedEx Cup. So we're trying to govern it a little bit more. So a player that played consistently throughout the year is going to be the one that ultimately wins the Charles Schwab Cup.
Well, Greg, we want to thank you for your time. We know you're very busy. The PGA Senior Championship is going on, and look forward to seeing you in Madison in late June. And we'll give up on the idea of Tiz setting the pins. I know that's not going to work. Huh?
I think you should bring it up with Nikki and Steve, and we'll support whatever you all want to do. But, we love being in Madison. It's a fabulous event. I know there's a lot of exciting things that certainly the team has in place this year, including the Friday night concert and then the special event, which is going on Saturday on the golf course with, the celebrity foursome that they bring in, which is tremendous. And we know we'll have another great champion, and American Family will continue to excel in raising great money for charity for the community. So thank you guys for all the support.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. We'll be back after this time out on the Golf Effect Radio Network.
No, that was
all right. Segment one's done.
That was a good.
All right. What do we do for segment two? We don't have any commercials, so we just roll.
Okay. I'm going to chat with Dennis about Steve on a couple of fronts, and then we're going to take another quick break. Then we'll come back with Mike.
Okay, Jimmy, just let me know when you're ready for segment two, and if you hit the bump music on there, we should be ready to go then.
Did you get a text back from him at all?
Who?
On your back?
I was just timing out the segment, so you had it, Dave. 13:36. Just let me know when you're ready to go, and I'll roll some music.
So I want to talk a little bit about Steve Stricker, I'm going to the conversation of potential Hall of Fame. Steve is playing on both tours. The PGA Champions Tour event is this weekend. People generally say that he needs to win a major to be considered for the Hall of Fame. But in your perspective, how do you look at the Hall of Fame? And is the top criteria winning a major, or are there other factors?
One of them is a major.
What are the other factors?
Well, it's contribution to golf in general, your success as a player, mostly on the PGA Tour, but now we've got the Champions Tour. They view a lot of things. Of course, one of them would be President's Cup competition, and those presidents, right, and the Ryder Cup. In his particular case, being a captain, going to be of the one here, as all going. And I think that there's a waning going on of making that one big criteria to win a major. We've had a number of people who win a major, especially at Augusta, who haven't won anyplace else, nor even. So why is that such a big deal? It's consistency throughout the deal. Not that a major is not a major, but it is another tournament.
So let's look at Steve realistically. Like you mentioned, he's played for over 20 years on the tour.
Yep.
He's the only player in the history of the game to be two-time comeback player of the year. Some people are still trying to figure out how that happened. So you've got the longevity factor. You've got the contributions that he's made to the sport of golf, including now the American Family Insurance Championship, the Payne Stewart Award. Sounds like I'm lobbying for him here, but just generally having the discussion, do you think he deserves, even if he doesn't win a major, to be in the Hall of Fame?
Well, trying to be as impartial as I can. Sure he is. I look at some of the people that are there. Yes, they've won majors. They've done some things. But on the big picture, which golf is today, not just a tour, it's what's happening outside the tour. So many of these fellows have foundations, Ernie Els and people like that have these foundations. Tiger Woods. I mean, he's doing such a magnificent job in California with his learning center. I mean, it doesn't get enough notoriety, but that's a Hall of Fame type person, and he fits that criteria. However, I'll tell you, the history for Steve is in his future. It's going to happen in the next 5 to 7 years. It may happen on the senior tour, but it may happen here. It may happen this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Or he is in contention and he's playing good enough to do well. And he feels good, other than this little slip up yesterday, but for the most part, pretty good.
He tweaked his back in the PGA event on the Memorial Day weekend. Let's talk a little bit about the rest of his career. Obviously, he can play on both tours and those kind of things. You mentioned he's going to be involved with the President's Cup and the Ryder Cup. As you look into your crystal ball and you talk to him all the time, how do you see the rest of Steve's career? What motivates him? For example, right now he says, I don't really have any particular criteria as to where I'm going to play. I'm going to play in the John Deere. I'm going to try to qualify for the U.S. Open. I'm going to play on another event in the next couple of weeks on the regular tour. How do you look at what's ahead for him?
Well, here's the biggest that I see. He loves to play golf. When he comes home, he gets done with the tournament. He flies in here on Sunday night. On Monday, he's playing with his family. He's got his family with him all the time, playing, which is a big deal for him. So he's totally relaxed. Nothing has changed. He doesn't have to worry about getting home and what's happening at home, as long as we're taking care of the dogs, and it's okay. But I see that he's going to do this for a while. He loves doing it. He has a place in Florida now, so you'll probably see him down there late December, January, where he can play, not hit balls in the trailer all the time. So you can, I can see him going for, at least the next 8 to 9 years, that he would be able to play. He's in great shape. I don't know quite yet this back thing.
Right.
I wasn't convinced yesterday in learning about it that it's bad. But as I told him, I hope it hurts the same way that it today as it hurt yesterday, especially on the back 9 that you played. That was pretty good. I hope it hurts making all them birdies, but he's gonna do fine.
We should mention that because of the Memorial Day weekend and also on a Monday, Steve is going to be throwing out the first pitch of the Brewer game. We are recording this show. Normally we do it live on Monday night, but this show is pre-recorded. So there could be a difference in Steve's situation with his back, depending on when you take a look at the show. You said something very interesting.
So what did you tell me? I just screwed up. Huh?
No.
Okay.
I tried to find a very diplomatic way to go right over the top there.
I got the eyes from the engineer. You're eyeing me up.
You said something in the last 24 hours I don't think I've ever heard you say. We were chatting, having a cup of coffee with Aaron Perkins, and we were talking about Steve, and people talk about he's a great putter. He hits great iron shots inside of 100 yards or whatever. You said there's something out about Steve Stricker that nobody's ever figured out in terms of why he's a good player. What is it?
Well, that he has that creativity, the mind creativity that he has. I deal with them, like you say, all the time. So when we look at a particular piece of ground and what we should do, his idea is always totally different. When we talk about this golf and the way the green should be, it's different. He has a real creative way about it. In fact, if you've ever seen some of the caricatures that he's done using matchsticks, he has that creative ability. And, good putting is reading greens. Once you learned how to hit it solid, good putting is the creativity. What's going to happen here, and putting all the things. But the final analysis of a good putt, is you've got to make that stroke and have that confidence that what you're reading, that's going to happen. It's not a surprise for him if he misses a putt. It's not because he read it bad. It's fundamentally something went wrong, which potentially could happen. But he has that great creativity, and will watch when he gets into trouble. That's when he excels the best. They talk about Phil Mickelson. He has that same stuff, where he goes, but he's more cavalier about it. Steve is very much a process type person, and be able to go ahead, and the creativity part is the point we were discussing, that he does have that. And that's what makes him good inside of 100 yards.
One of the other things Dennis Tiziani has said here at Cherokee, and I'm going to find out if it's still a factor, because our next guest, reportedly, he's not saying he's the best player at Cherokee. Dennis Tiziani says he has the best swing at Cherokee. Haven't you said that in the past about our next guest?
Well, why did you tell him that here? His head can't get in the door now. Now you're telling him that stuff.
We'll be back after this time out on the Golf Effect Radio Network.
I'm not saving this segment separately. Do you want me to? Okay, the length is 721 on this segment. 21. And the total file I've got right now with all the spaces taken out is 2057. 2057.
We're back on Talking Golf on the Golf Effect Radio Network, along with Dennis Tiziani. I'm Paul Brown, and Mike McFarland is with us. And Mike, a longtime member here at Cherokee Country Club. Well,
charter member.
Charter
right.
member?
That's right.
Sure.
You are, huh?
Yeah, we won the club championship back in 1919 or something like that.
He hits the ball higher than anybody I've ever seen. Why is that? Why does he hit it?
1970.
So Dennis doesn't see where it goes.
No, he does good.
Does he have the best swing at Cherokee?
He does. Natural type swing. He does have that. And
what do you mean when you say that?
Well, because from start to finish, from the address position, especially at the top of his swing, and then his movement to the ball, somewhere along the line, somebody must have given some direction, and he embellished that, and it carried with him for 40 years, 45 years.
Who helped you with your game?
Well, actually, Orv Eriksson, you remember Orv Eriksson?
Don't say that. He's a left-hander.
That's what made it easy. He would stand on one side, I'd stand on the other, and he would swing, I would swing, and it worked out perfectly. But Orv Eriksson, actually, we used to go over to Warner Park before the buildings were up and hit golf balls. And
He was very good.
He was very good.
In fact, he won the seniors or whatever.
Exactly.
He won
Wisconsin
the Wisconsin Senior Open. He won.
Lefty. Yes.
Hey, I got to get another plug in for a lefty because this just happened before we recorded this show. There was a left-hander here at Cherokee playing the blue tees, and Dennis is the one that pointed it out. He hits his golf shot in the case where we watched him. He teed it up on 10 from the blue tees, used a driver. He puts the club in the bag.
A little bag. He's got a little bag.
And he runs down the fairway on every hole.
Every hole, yeah.
I know a couple of left-handers that don't do that.
Well, your boys can barely walk. How the hell you're going to run? That's good.
By the way, not only is he potentially have the best swing, I played with him in Phoenix where he got a hole-in-one at Briarwood.
Yeah. He didn't buy a drink. I know that.
No, he didn't.
No.
What was that? Number 7?
I think it was
6 or
11. 11. I hit a 6-iron on a 175-yard hole.
Yeah.
And it bounced once. I thought it bounced over the green. I lost it.
I saw it go
and
in.
You saw it go in.
I saw it go in. Yeah.
So I'm glad I've got eyes with me.
And one of the other things he did when we were in Phoenix, the Ping factory is in Phoenix. And you can actually tour the factory. You got to get your reservation probably 2 to 3 months in advance because they only do the tour one time per day. Mike, my brother Daryl, and I toured the Ping factory, and then he went back 4 times after we were initially there to get his club adjusted. But in summary, Mike, what did you see? What intrigued you about taking the tour of the Ping factory?
Well, I thought that from start to finish, it was a very professional tour. They do a nice job of giving you a little bit of history about how Ping came about, some of the things that Karsten Solheim did. He some great little anecdotal stories about one of which is he did work for General Electric as an engineer.
Yeah.
He invented the electric frying pan, which is interesting, which then leads to my next statement about him. And he got into this. He invented the investment cast process. We learned, and he actually started the process in his kitchen, and his wife would find these pieces of metal and investment cast pieces in the oven on occasion, and she said, "Honey, you've got to move out. I've got dinner to make. You've got to go find a building somewhere." So he did, and he started it up in Phoenix, and right on, I believe, 23rd Avenue, which is now Karsten Way. And it really is quite an interesting complex. It's very
watch the complete manufacturing.
Yeah, a lot of the buildings are from late 1950s, 1960s, because he bought up a lot of property, just individual buildings as he grew the business, and they're well taken care of. It doesn't look like a modern manufacturing plant, but they really know what they're doing there, and it was just very impressive from start to finish. What I thought was really interesting was the assembly process for the woods and the irons that they do. They have 8 stations and 8 rows of those stations in which they assemble the clubs. I think they can do 4,000 in an 8-hour period of time, which is quite impressive. What I was really amazed with is how they integrated the technology, the laser aspects of loft and lie readings. They used a lot of computerism, a lot of computer software. It's integral to the entire process. And the other thing I thought was very, very nice to see is that they are really, really strong on quality control. Every one of those stations has a criteria, and it's shafting, it's gripping, it's weighting. It's everything is right down to a T. And in any golf set that at the end of the process that doesn't meet spec goes right back to the beginning. So they really do have a great process going there.
Dennis, how do you see the change in technology in clubs over the years? What
Well-
stands out to you?
Well, different than Karsten, who did this way back when I played on the tour, way back in the 60s and 70s. That was coming on, especially the putter. We can talk about that putter. But that group, and his son now, John, has really picked up the ball to make this happen. That's kind of the strength. Carson was a nerd a little bit, you know, in doing this, as you
He
mentioned.
liked to invent things.
Yeah, he really did. And he did a good job. And Investment Cast is good, but now you're talking to somebody who played with forged clubs. And in the Investment Cast process, you make the casting, you pour the metal in, but it's not like a cast club or a forged club where it's a solid piece and the veins are running correct. There's no way in a forged club or cast club you can do that, because that's an amalgamation of metal. This is a metal. So he was able, though, to be able to move and make perimeter weighting and make the weighting such so that you did get that solid feel all the time. And it appealed to people, you know, I mean, especially the putter.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
that
I
was
can remember when that first came out, everybody loved it. Well, you know why? Because the putter was so solid that when it hit it, the ball went. And what happens to people who miss putts is most of them, they miss it short. Well, this putter would get you past the hole. So consequently, it's the greatest putter in the world because it made the ball go past the hole, go in. But that being said, it continues to be kind of a model. A lot of people have modeled after that putter.
Dennis, what about the change in technology by all the different manufacturers? Now you've got different shafts, whatever. Is all of this good for the game?
Well, I think it is. You know, people today, especially our particular people, you call them millennials, but anybody, they're looking how they can improve their game, and they're trying to buy the game. And this, in many cases, you can go in and adjust the club to a bad swing. Right? And you'll get some response. My way of doing it is make the swing right rather than buy a club to make it right. But some people will go ahead and spend their $500, $600, $700 on a club, and if they did the same amount and learning how to hit it properly, it'd be good. But that's not the way it is today. And everybody wants to hit it far. You ever hear somebody say they want to hit it shorter?
Right. Well, Dennis, you know, I've got a question for you. We see a lot of the tour professionals, especially within the last 2 years, I've noticed they hit their irons so far now. And part of that, no doubt, is you can decrease the loft a little bit, make a 7-iron into a 6-iron by just knocking down a couple degrees. It changes the club characteristics. But I'm kind of wondering, what is going on out there? I mean, we should see some amateurs picking up on some of these distance improvements.
Well, they are.
Yeah,
they are. I mean, I teach them all the time, and they're hitting at 300, 330. I mean, I've got a young fella. Of course, he's good size. He's 6'7", 250, but he hits that 3-wood, you know, over the road here. It's 300 yards, and he hits it over. So it does happen. But there's another thing. You're adjusting the club. A lot of what's being taught today is adjusting the hand position at the end of your backswing, where it's a bowed position, okay?
Right.
So it's bowed down. Well, that means it's shut.
Like Dustin Johnson, for example.
Well, Dustin Johnson, Koepka, there's a whole bunch of people. I see Jordan Spieth, chicken wing flip. You know, I mean, they bend the club down. That's in the shut position, and then they practice flipping, not rotating. So they'll lead with their elbow to make it not go left, but they'll flip a little bit higher, a little further. So there's an adjustment there in what's going on. And you will notice most of these guys who hit it far are hitting it far left to right, not right to left.
Power fades.
Right. So you're lining up left and do strong body rotation. And if you can time the flip, it'll go straight. But most of those guys aren't playing today at Colonial, because you got to hit it in the fairway, right? So here comes Zach Johnson, here comes Steve Stricker, and people like that hit the ball in the fairway.
Talk about hitting in the fairway. What about this twist face technology that TaylorMade has?
It's old technology. That's nothing new about it. Years ago,
bulge and roll has been around for years.
Well, that's right. My persimmon heads were a 10-10 bulge and roll. So it bulged 10 degrees and it rolled 10 degrees. So when I hit it on the toe, gyroed to the back. When I hit it on the heel, it gyroed back. So the real issue is that my old wood never gave way. I didn't have a coefficient of expansion. I didn't have the launch. Now they control that thin metal with how much it can launch. So you're getting help in the face of the club on top of the rotation of the shaft. When you have carbon, carbon is the strongest bond there is lineally, but radially it's the weakest. So the twist or radial torque is distance, 1/2 mv squared. It's radial torque, how I can twist that. So they're putting the twist in the shaft. Well, you combine that twist with the shaft. These guys are working out all the time. You know, they're not small. You stand next to them. You know, you don't have no Ben Hogan, 5'8", 165. I mean, you got some guys that got some power there. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into this deal.
Well,
all good for the game.
Thank you for that insight.
Yeah, and we could talk more on this, but we're running out of time. Interesting discussion. We'll be back after this time out on the Golf Effect Radio Network.
You ready? 12:21. Total runtime is 33, rounded up to 18. $33.18. All right, if you're ready, I'll get things going here.
And we're back on Talking Golf on the Golf Effect Radio Network. Hope you're having a nice Memorial Day weekend along with Dennis Tiziati. I'm Paul Brown. We're here at Cherokee Country Club, and a little bit earlier in the program, we mentioned if you're listening to the show, we asked you to get a club. It didn't make any difference which club it was, but get that club, and now would be the opportunity to put it in your hand. And Dennis is going to take us through gripping the club and the pros and the cons of the way you do it and that kind of thing, and give you a little instruction that hopefully will help you out, because really, doesn't it start with a grip?
Well, that's what it is. You know, you put your hands in balance. So as we go ahead and begin to do the other parts of the swing, which we'll talk about. Now, do I have to hold it left-handed or right?
You can hold it either way you want.
Hold it right. Okay, let's get started. We're going to do this as if we talk. We'll grab it with our left hand. And if you can see how I'm putting it on an angle across my hand, so the butt end of the club is under the flesh pad of my left hand. The butt end is under the flesh pad, and I can feel in this digit of my forefinger, I can feel the rib or the roundness of the club. So it's on an angle with my left hand. Here's the key. The base knuckle of the forefinger of your left hand, that base knuckle, has to be in the upper left-hand quadrant of the club. Get it? That was
I
easy.
got it.
That was easy. Okay. So I put it on. So here we go. That base knuckle now is in the upper left-hand quadrant. How do I know that that's correct? One of two ways. Have somebody go ahead and pull your arm straight. So you pull it right out, and you'll see this bow where this shaft and this forearm in the same plane. And you can see the blade, leading edge is straight up and down. If I went too far and I turned it too far and I pulled it straight, there's the blade. We don't want to hit a ball like that. Likewise, if it's too far to the left or too weak and we pulled it straight, we get. So the key then, and this happens to be right from a guy, you'd know this name, Sam Snead.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah, we were pretty good buddies and stuff. And I would sit in the locker room a lot of times and talk to him about these things, what made him, because he was a field player, and make him, but that's what he would say. You take that knuckle, you put it right here on the top, or you can pull it straight, which he did, or what I do a lot of times, and I will go ahead and break the club up. When I do that, and I look at that, that blade is straight. In fact, I would err a little bit, and the toe is just turned in just slightly. That would give you a perfect left hand. That's your lead hand. That's your direction hand. So if you're off in this hand and you apply power, we get power in the wrong direction. Right hand. Now, it's in the base of your fingers. Base of your fingers. Again, the base knuckle of your right hand is in the upper right-hand quadrant of the club. Easy to understand. That knuckle and this knuckle, upper left, upper right. We want to make sure this, that the fatty part of this thumb of your right hand is anchoring or holding our left thumb in place. That's where the tension should be. Back 3 fingers of my left hand, middle 2 of my right. The middle 2 fingers squeezing the base of the fatty part of my thumb of my right hand, holding my thumb in place. Very, very important, because if once this comes apart, then this thumb can move around. Then this hand can move. Your direction hand isn't going to work. So this holds it in place. Again, when you do that, it's going to help you in the thing which we'll talk about later. It'll help you when you make your turn away from the ball. Because if the club moves first, the tension pulls this apart. Now you've got the bad rotation. So it's so important, because as we get on, and we'll revert back to this grip, and in the release process, what happens? In between this, the top of your swing and impact, a lot of things go on. Many of them are subconscious. There's only one conscious move anyway, which we'll get into. But again, across the base, underneath the flesh pad, so I should be able to take these fingers off, take this finger, and be able to push down with that butt end, just like that. Because that's what happens when we go to the right. So back 3 fingers on my left, base knuckle in the upper left-hand quadrant, right hand, base of my middle 2 fingers, base knuckle of this index finger against the upper right-hand quadrant, and the squeeze is middle 2 fingers of my right, back 3 of my left. Middle 2 to hold the fatty part of my thumb, of my right thumb, holds my left thumb in place. and we got a good grip. And we'll check it, put both hands on. You can do them one hand at a time if you want. Again, if it's on too far underneath, which I see, and our hand comes to straight, well, we can't do that, you know.
Yeah, I would assume a lot of people do not have the right grip. Is that fair to say?
Most of them don't know.
Yeah.
You know, but once you know, now when you come to see me and, you know, after you've seen the show, no excuses. The grip should be right.
Okay. I hope that helps you a little bit. We'll be back after this time out on the Golf Effect Radio Network.
.525. .3843. Do you need me to do some kind of countdown at the end? So I need to get 6:30. So that would be 39, 10, 45, 10 will be the end. So I roll music at 44:40. Yep. Got it. All right. I'll roll music then 6 minutes into the segment, and then that'll be 30 seconds long. You guys ready?
Yep.
All right, here we go.
Back on Talking Golf on the Golf Effect Radio Network, along with Dennis Tiziani. I'm Paul Brown on this Memorial Day weekend. And as we mentioned, because of some circumstances, in fact, Steve Stricker on Memorial Day, assuming he doesn't have a back problem, is going to be throwing out the first pitch at a Milwaukee Brewer game. Tiz and the family are going to be over there watching him doing that. And we were laughing this morning.
Right.
We actually came up with a pretty good idea. He had to take a wedge along.
Right.
And instead of throwing the pitch in, he had to just kind of chip it toward the catcher.
That's what I think.
I think that'd be cool. That'd be a national story if he did that.
Yeah. Well, I'll see how he picks up on that. I don't know if he'll go for that. It'd really be pretty good.
Yeah, it really would be
the
different.
ball is a little bit bigger, a little bit harder, but you have to just hit it a little harder.
You ever thrown out a first pitch anywhere?
Yes, I have, right down here at the stadium.
Yeah.
I threw the first pitch, and guy.
Was it a strike or?
Well, yeah, the way you judge it, a little bit of dust got to come out of his glove when the ball hits, and it did. The dust came out and was perfect. The guy
you
was
throw
quite
it
surprised.
from the mound, or were you about halfway there?
No, I threw it from the mound, and he was kind of surprised.
Was that before or after it bounced on the ground?
No. Then he gave me the ball. I said I thought he wanted me to sign it, so I signed the ball and gave it to him.
And as we mentioned in recording this show, so obviously, and when it airs on Monday, the events of golf are going to be over for the weekend. Steve is his back. They're not exactly sure exactly what's going on. Huh?
Yeah, I talked to him, and it bothered him, and he walked. And like I said, I hope it bothers him today, like it did yesterday. He's making all these birdies, but he was home. He got some personal trainer, and he was there. But I talked to him this morning, and he said it's not great, and that's a bothersome thing. When they say it's okay, but it hurts. Now it can't be okay if it hurts. So don't know whether I'll keep out of it, but in my mind, if it's bothering you, then forget about it. Something isn't right. Is it going to work out worse if you're on there? Well, so,
and he talked about the pain was in the area where he had the surgery back in 2009,
and he heard it pop, when he hit the ball, and that's what hurt him. But he made it around. He got around, and it got better as he got on. But I kind of worry about it today.
Well, and you talk about Steve is 51 years of age, and for anybody on the tour that's been out there, and as you get older, you do wonder about the amount of tournaments you play and that type of thing. It becomes a factor.
Well, it's hitting the ground and hitting the ball. How many times they hit a solid ball? I mean, it's got to have reverberate. It's gonna get you. And some of these guys have such great muscle mass, not so much mass, but muscle, that it's breaking their bones. I mean, take a look at all the guys about, that had the back problems, or all these guys hitting it 4 million miles and unloading through the ball, full bore all the time. Well, it's great for a while, but Tiger Woods is a good example. I mean, here's a guy who built it up, broke his leg. That's how bad that was.
Dennis, for the recreational golfer, for guys like Kevin Ryan, who's helping us with the show, and Dave McCann and Mike McFarland, who was on a little bit earlier, myself, when you get older, how should we look at golf in terms of our physical capabilities, playing the game and still enjoying it?
Well, you still have to keep score. I mean, that's the best way to do it. Your score, the distance. See, I'd move up. I'd play, which I do now. I play the white. It's great. I'm hitting kind of the same irons that I was hitting when I played the gold. You play the forward tees. Get up as far as you can, shorter, a little bit, so that you can hit the same iron you hit years ago from a distance, but get it so you can play for it. Playing it shorter is the way to go, not longer. The other thing is, as we get older, we want to still have whatever flexibility we have. So you might want to go ahead and move the ball up in your stance a little bit, okay? And when you do that, square up a little bit. So the appearance will be like I'm going to hook the ball. And then what you'll do from that stance is feed the toe. Make sure the club goes by. Now, what that does is, by moving it up, we make the club a little longer. By going ahead and feeding the toe, we're doing rotation. So that means radial torque, we're going to get distance. So the ball will be a little higher and a little bit more right to left. That'll help you as you get on, and it'll help you get to the right of the ball easier when you do that. Because when you set up, shoulders are already kind of closed to the line, which then forces you to make sure you feed the toe, make sure the club goes to the left. So you'll be with a longer club right to left. If nothing else, when it hits the ground, it has topspin. We'll get 10 yards on the ground,
But is it a macho factor with all of us that you don't want to shorten, you don't want to move up to the forward tees, or what do you think it is? A lot of people go, I don't want to move up to those tees.
Swallow your pride. Get up there and play golf, I mean, concentrate on the short game. That's what to do. I get it up and down every time, or I can really putt. That's not hard to do. Concentrate on your short game, so that when you do, just like hockey, you got to keep it in front of the goal. You know about that. You can't score from behind the goal, right?
It's pretty difficult. Right, I've seen it done once, but
they have to lift it up. And
they flipped it off the back of the goaltender.
That was a joke, but you keep it in front of the goal. You can score from in there and practice that short game. Various clubs, not always a 60 or a 56. Because you can roll it. There's two kinds of games, one in the air, one on the ground. Putting is on the ground. The rest of the game is in the air. So you can kind of get this club on the ground a little bit more. I've seen putts roll in the cup, not fly in the cup.
Well, I can just see it now. Tiz's back is hurting. The guy that's going to throw out the first pitch on Monday will be Dennis Tiziani.
Left-handed.
So, for our entire crew, thanks for joining us on this Memorial Day weekend. And that's another edition of Talking Golf on the Golf Effect Radio Network.
Thank you for tuning in.
Really good.
So Dennis, a guy that... All right, thanks, Jimmy.